right. City Council general government has started.
Sorry.
Everything's good.
Had a mechanical failure. What do they call that? Never mind.
But we're glad your mechanical failure got fixed just in the nick
Thanks
of
to
time.
the technical assistance of our in-house engineer.
We're a good team. Yeah.
We are.
So
Not sure what anybody says.
let's go ahead and do roll call. That's right.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Councilwoman Cochran. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Here.
Councilmember Hamrick.
Here.
Councilmember Huckes.
Here.
Councilmember Meisner.
Here.
Councilmember Turner.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith.
Here.
Mayor Troutman.
Here.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started with our Title 16 discussion, and I assume we're going to lead that with Patrick.
Yeah, I believe we're waiting for the city attorney to call in, but Patrick, if you want to go ahead and get started, that would be great.
Certainly, and in fact, this is not just Title 16. There's an amendment to planned unit developments in Title 17 associated with this as well. In your agenda packets today, in addition to the staff report, you have two items. One is a resolution that would potentially amend Appendix A to Title 16, this document. And then also an ordinance that would amend Title 17, specifically Chapter 17.16, concerning planned unit developments or PUDs. The idea behind this was there's a certain amount of redundancy that's currently built into the process, and in the hope of maybe streamlining our review processes as well as saving time in review, the goal would be to have the preliminaries for both major subdivisions and PUDs continue to go to hearings before Planning Commission and Council, but then the finals for major subdivision and PUDs could then be administratively processed. That would save more than 60 days in process time in that area. And our rationale for this is the finals in both the case of major subdivision and PUDs have to be exactly the same as what was approved at preliminary hearing for the preliminary project. That means as part of the preliminary, both Planning Commission and Council will have seen all of the dedications that are going to be proposed for new road rights of way that the city will ultimately have to accept and maintain, any easements for drainage purposes, any sort of public dedications that need to happen would have been approved as part of that preliminary. And then after the preliminary is approved, there's a one-year calendar vesting of rights associated with that preliminary with a provision that the zoning administrator could grant a one-year extension for cause, should the cause be sufficient, during which time the preliminary or the final for both a major subdivision or a PUD could be brought in and then administratively reviewed and approved. To the extent that there were any differences between the final plat that we were reviewing and the preliminary that had been approved, the applicant would be told they have to go back and amend the preliminary, which would again have to go back to hearings before Planning Commission and Council in order to ensure that it is completely consistent with the final. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I don't know if we've got Corey on the line, but what we were attempting to do was unite these processes, well, not unite them, but streamline them to save some time on the back end of the process. And this is some feedback that we've gotten from the development community that would be helpful to them. We also want to do a similar thing to planned development districts, or PDDs. Unfortunately, that's a bit more of a legal knot that we have to untie in order to straighten out, so we may have to bring that back to you at a later time. So if you've got any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
All right, Mayor Troutman.
Thank you, Patrick. I had been through a similar situation in another state, and the vesting, what I found interesting, that I liked, because after he'd gone through all the panels and everything else, they said, okay, it's done. And then there was no, to me, that process created a positive situation that I wasn't going to be hit from the side on something that maybe could have come in at the last minute. So if you've not been through that process, I like that, because, and Patrick's correct, because once you have gone through the council and planning commission, there's really not a whole lot after that. You're pretty much done, except for administrative stuff. And the vesting thing, that's when I ran into the word vesting. I didn't know what I thought that was, but when we were done with our subdivision through that process, it was done. It was just the nuts and bolts that administration had to do, and I liked that idea because I didn't have any surprises after we were done. So it's not a question, it's a commentary, okay? And I've read this, and I like it, so.
Okay. Councilman Meisner.
Well, first of all, I'd like to congratulate you, or whomever came up with this brilliant idea of trying to make us a little more business friendly. I sincerely commend you for that, whoever did that. Second of all, I kind of defer my, not my vote, but at least I would rely on the mayor with his previous experiences in his short life.
Thank you.
Because to me, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I understand the mechanics of it, but he would have a much better understanding in terms of the practical application and what it means. And so I would rely on him for any input or questions or support.
And Jim, what you have to understand is this is a very expensive,
Right.
time-consuming, people-intense thing that you do. And to get down to basically seeing the finish line and saying, oh, by the way, we've got something else here, is expensive and somewhat discouraging. And when that word was thrown out, the vesting thing, the idea, and that once I got through all the hoops and everything, it was clear I had no surprises. I could actually start engaging contractors and things like that we were going to do this. And that's what I liked about it. So
There is another advantage in the vesting process as well, that when you have that vesting that's valid for a period of a year, effectively you can go and take that to lending institutions
Right.
and get financing based upon that. And that will now happen as a part of preliminary rather than after final.
And that's correct. That's the other portion of it that we had liked because well, the gentleman I was working with didn't need a lender, thank you, but that was also brought up that we could now take it and if we needed construction funding, they would be very understanding and welcoming of that because we're ready to go.
Okay, Councilman Meisner.
So just to clarify, even though I said I didn't have questions, we're not going to have a situation where after the preliminary and before the final, we have the request from, I hate to say this, the city to install a light pole.
To the extent that there's going to be light pole installations or other requirements, what we need to do, what our goal to do is to make sure that that's all fleshed out as part of the preliminary plan so that that's not going to be a surprise at the final plat.
So if you didn't flush it out, whose responsibility is it once you approve the plan and then a month before we're closing, oh, by the way, there needs to be a light pole over there? And I know that sounds simplistic and that it wouldn't happen, but I think people up here could verify that it has happened. So what would happen if the determination is made that a light pole needs to be installed somewhere?
The best answer to that question I can give you without having experienced that myself as a condition in reviewing a plat is that if we missed it at preliminary and the final plat was submitted and we noticed that it was gone or that it was needed on site, we would probably have to say, well, that was our error. The final plat that you submitted is consistent with the approved preliminary plat.
Is his statement part of public record? I mean, that's critical. I realize it's a very small, seemingly insignificant item, but those types of difficult things have happened in the past where all of a sudden we get this quirky requirement to fix the ditch or do this or do that, and it's like a never-ending battle of add-ons.
Now, I want to add on to that if subsequent to the final plat being approved and recorded and construction commencing and the residential neighborhood actually being finished, if the need for that light still existed, at some point in the future, it would probably fall back on the city to pay for getting one installed.
I'm good.
But the key thing, the idea of vesting, is that, okay, we're all done. We've all had a look at it. And I don't know if that scenario is going to happen. seriously. And I would suppose, since I was on the other side of that, if you came to me and said, here's my rationale for maybe putting in that light pole or that, I probably would say, yeah, you're probably right. But the big things, the roads, the streets, the sidewalks, that's, you're done. But the little stuff that you're talking about, if you were to give me a reasonable opinion as why we would like to kind of have that now, it probably would work out okay. That's not a biggie.
Isn't there something in here, though, if they wanted to change their plat or PUD plans, that they'd have to come and get a revision, and could that
Right.
could that trigger additional
Well,
requirements?
if we received a final, either a final plat or a final PUD that in some substantial way deviated from what had been approved at preliminary, we would have to tell the applicant this is not consistent with what council approved. Therefore, you will have to go back and amend your PUD to make it consistent with the final plat you're now showing us. That is a public process that involves hearings before both Planning Commission and Council.
Okay, are there any other questions from city council members? I do also like to say thank you so much for presenting this. This is exactly what we want, is being more business-friendly, more streamlined. I would love to see more of this coming forth, of more possibilities. And I guess my question is, do you have more in your toolbox of experience that you can bring before us, that you have in mind?
As I said, the PDD process, which is different from the PUD process, is another one where you have a preliminary and final component associated with it, but it's different enough in terms of how it's written that that's going to be a little more difficult to unravel as a knot and then present it in a similar way so that the final on the back end can be made administrative. But we do plan to do that. We're working with our legal counsel on drafting an ordinance about that as well.
Okay, we'll keep more coming as we
Absolutely.
move forward. My second question is for Ryan. Patrick said this kind of came about as feedback from contractors and developers as something that they would like to see happen. And we've talked about starting some regularly scheduled meetings with contractors and developers to address their concerns and needs. Is that something that's still on our horizon?
It is still something that's on the horizon, and, as we continue to move forward, we'll start setting up more of those contractor meetings
Okay,
and developer meetings.
Okay.
Patrick, can you remind council when the process before, when they'll see this come before them for a vote?
Certainly. So if you give your concurrence today that you'd like us to move forward, both the resolution and the ordinance will go to Planning Commission at their next regular meeting, which is June 26th. If Planning Commission passes the resolution, which will amend this document here, that will be done. You won't see the resolution again. That'll be a resolution of Planning Commission to change the preliminary and final plat process. The ordinance will then come back to you with Planning Commission's recommendation at your July 15th meeting for first reading on public hearing, and then the second reading will occur August 5th.
All right, excellent. Councilman Meisner, do you have another comment?
2, do we have any current projects that you're working with that you could disclose that would be impacted by this?
We do not currently have any active projects for either PUD or major subdivision approval at this time.
Okay. I don't know what my other comment was.
Okay, well, I guess we'll go to the council members and see if we have the approval to move
Thumbs up.
forward. We'll start with Caitlin. John, down to Mayor.
Yes. What?
Yep. John, yep.
This is for me and this is for her.
Okay.
Two votes. Wait a
All
minute.
right. You also have my endorsement. Thank you so much. We
Thank you very
appreciate
much. We will
Thank you,
move
Patrick.
forward with
Thank you,
this.
Patrick.
Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. Good job.
Thank you.
it.
Too
Okay,
late.
Meisner does have one more question.
Well, the point is, the more that we accomplish this to display our willingness to work with contractors, the more involvement you're going to have at a contractor meeting. Part of the problem that I've tried to express in the past is contractors feel like I'm not showing up because it didn't do any good. And if I do show up, I'm going to probably be penalized. And the more that we display that we're actively listening and trying to take their requests and move forward with them, I think those contractor meetings over time will wind up being very productive. Thank you.
All right, excellent. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I'd like to introduce to you two ladies from the Homeless Coalition. We have Rochelle Ryder, and the head of the coalition, and director of Loaves and Fishes, Dee Dee Clements. I'd like to invite them to give our point-in-time homelessness count report.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
It's light blinking.
It's trying to do something. Probably all that feedback wrote out.
Well, maybe while he's getting the first slide up, we can just talk a little bit about what the point-in-time count is. So every year across the United States, the federal government loves communities to do something what they call a point-in-time count, and that's where we count the number of individuals who are homeless on a given night. And so this count is always held in January. It's generally always held in the last week. I don't know why that is. That's just when they just choose to do it. And so here in Fremont County, our point-in-time count was actually done on January 30th. This year, through the help of the Homeless Coalition, we were actually able to kind of spread our survey out to further than just Florence, Penrose, and Canyon City, which is what we did last year. We were actually able to go to Cotopaxi, and we went up to Prospector Park, up by 8 Mile, and then there were some folks that actually went around the Westcliff area, or on the Fremont County side. And so we got a pretty good count. We know that we missed some, but again, it's just a snapshot that tells you what it looks like on a given time. So all the information that you're going to see was gathered by volunteers, and the information came directly from the person conducting the survey. So it was all self-reported, and so we just asked the questions, and then they gave us the answers.
I do apologize. I don't know why.
I don't know what you're doing, but you've turned my, what? Yeah,
Yeah. I don't know why it's not turning back on.
well, you've turned my phone off.
Well, while we're waiting, Councilman Meisner, you wanted to ask a question?
I'm curious, two things. I find it odd that a homeless count would be done in the dead of winter. Because of the way that I think, I could see somebody somewhere deciding that if you choose that particular point in time, you're going to give a sway to the numbers, either in terms of increased numbers or decreased numbers.
No,
The
you're
next
correct.
comment, I guess, that goes with that is I've heard rumor about another seasonal count, maybe a summer count or something.
Yeah. So one of the things that the Homeless Coalition has talked about, because we all agree with you that having a count in the middle of the winter is not giving us a true picture of the number of people who are experiencing homelessness. And so the thought is that maybe the Homeless Coalition would do something later this summer or early this fall, just to kind of get a truer picture of what it looks like. So.
All right, and then Councilmember Turner has a question.
Actually, Jim covered it. I was just going to mention that I had heard they were considering doing a count this summer, which I think would be good.
And,
Yeah.
and I wonder if one of the reasons for in January is because there's more of a concern of those who are sleeping unsheltered in the middle of the winter than in the middle of the summer. It's a little bit more pressing to find shelter for the homeless in the cold months, perhaps.
It could also depend on the community in terms of whether you wanted that number to be higher or lower. I mean, there's some political motivation
Right.
for where you want to shift that number to be. And I hate to say that, but that's reality is that.
Right. And communities don't have a choice. We're told that you have to do the count the last week in January. So we don't have a choice of doing it in the summer or in the fall or anything, so.
Is there an actual cost associated with that to you?
No, except time by volunteers and well, I guess there's incidental costs. This year, we actually put together gift bags or thank you bags, I guess is probably a better way of saying it, where people purchased like $5 gift cards from various fast food restaurants, and there was soap and hygiene items and just all kinds of things that a person could use. I think there was a flashlight and food. Yeah. We actually talked to people who are experiencing homelessness and said, what could you use in a thank you bag? And they gave us some ideas. And so those items were purchased by members of our coalition, and we put together, I don't know, well over 100, it was 100 bags. I think that's what we shot for, 100 bags, so, yeah.
I guess in regards to that, at least from my perspective as an individual council person, if we did another seasonal count, I would ask the administrator for some kind of support to kind of help with some of those incidentals.
Thank you. We'll keep that in mind, yes. So again, as we mentioned, this is just a snapshot. This is not an annual total. This is just a snapshot on a given night, and our given night was on January 30th. So when you compare our numbers to last year and this year, you'll see that this year it was 128 individuals that were experiencing homelessness, and last year it was 195. So unsheltered and sheltered. Unsheltered means people who are actually sleeping outside in their cars, in a tent, in a place that we would call uninhabitable. So it could be a shed, someplace like that. Sheltered would be in an emergency shelter. So as you guys know, there are 2 emergency shelters here in Fremont County, Loaves and Fishes being one, and the other one is a domestic violence shelter. And then you'll also notice that there were 11 veterans this time and 18 veterans last time. So just to break down the numbers, 73 men, 39 women, and 16 children is what we counted as being homeless this year. And the good news is that it was a 35% reduction. And a lot of this has to do with Journey Home. So Journey Home, as all of you know, is a new permanent supportive housing project that will celebrate its first year, June 11th. And at the time of move-in last year, there were 43 adults and 19 children that moved in. And along with that, our housing authority with the Upper Arkansas Council of Government, they have done a really good job in acquiring new housing vouchers for Fremont County. And so those new housing vouchers have actually housed 17 adults and 11 children. And so we know for sure that there were at least 20 individuals that were counted on our 2018 point-in-time count that actually got one of these housing vouchers or moved into Journey Home. So that just shows some of the reduction where some of that went. The true test is really going to be next year, 2020, when Journey Home will be full, and we'll see whether or not our numbers continue to drop, which is our hope, or if it spikes or what happens. So we'll be back next year.
Did you have a question?
Oh, yes.
I know Christ Church, they were housing homeless during the wintertime. Were they included in that count, and where do they fit?
So the folks that were staying at, and that only depends if they were, and I don't know if they were spending the night at that night on January 30th, but if they were spending the night on January 30th, then they would have been counted in the emergency shelter, as in sheltered.
All right. And I would like to point out that they did increase their number of nights through their volunteers efforts. And so they were, originally it was only maybe 1 or 2 nights a week,
Right.
and they were up to 5 nights, if
Yes.
that's right. Thanks to many folks who actually travel all the way from Westcliff to come and stay overnight at the church to provide that added shelter.
Yeah, and the gentleman that travels from Westcliff, I want to say he's maybe 77, 80 years old, and he would pick the worst nights and come from Westcliff to drive because he wanted to make sure that the folks had a warm place to stay, so.
Yeah, I had a chance to talk to him on the phone, and he's an amazing gentleman. Always
is.
talked about what a blessing it was to him and a joy to have that experience,
Yeah.
to be with them. But he is getting older in age, and so that's really a concern that some of our a lot of our volunteer force are getting a little bit too old for helping in this manner.
Yeah.
Councilman Meisner has a question.
Do you have numbers of families or adults that were participating in the I don't know what else to call this, but what was the mobile trailer project that we? No, the mobile home project that we.
What's that
Caring
called?
Hands
or.
We helped sponsor an organization that acquires reasonably used mobile homes and then refurbishes them and then uses them for what I understand was this. Do we know the numbers of people that were in those without getting information from that organization?
No, those folks, home, Catherine is the one that does it.
Catherine,
I think place
yeah.
called.
Yes. So they, no, I don't, those numbers, I do not have those numbers. I know that many of those families, or some of those families, receive vouchers, because she works with low-income families, and definitely those that are able to get the vouchers. And as many of you know, the rental rates have increased significantly, so it's really hard to, once you even get a voucher, to find a place that will accept the voucher, because the vouchers are at a set amount. And Catherine is really good with working with families to making sure that she keeps their rent affordable for those vouchers. But I do not have that answer, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Mhm. So this year, one of the things that the Homeless Coalition wanted to do was we wanted to ask some additional questions. And so we put together some of these additional questions. And one of the questions that is often asked of us, and probably often asked of you all, is how long, or where are these people coming from that are experiencing homelessness in Fremont County, and how long have they lived here? So that was one of the questions that was asked. And so as you can see, that 51% of the folks that we interviewed said that they had been living in Fremont County for 1 year or longer. And then 49% that they had said that they have lived here less than a year. And so it's right down the middle. It's 50-50 of the folks that we interviewed as being maybe a Fremont County resident or not a Fremont County resident. So the next question we asked for those folks that were not.
Excuse
Yes.
me, Dee Dee. Council Member Gonzalez has a question.
I should have asked this earlier, but when you poll, do you go around parks and
Yes.
typically where they
Yep.
they stay at night and okay.
So we, the Homeless Coalition members did not go out at night. We partnered with the Sheriff's Department, the Police Department, and so they did some of the night surveys for us. But we definitely went to libraries, we went to parks, we went walked along the river and places like that. But we didn't go into any encampments or anything like that, just because we didn't feel like it was safe, and from the guidance of the law enforcement, felt like we didn't need to go there.
So did the law enforcement go to the encampments?
They went out, and I don't know that they went specifically to target encampments, but they generally know the population of people who are homeless and where they're, at a given night. And so they went around to those particular places that they were familiar with, people having been there. We also, this year, partnered with Bureau of Land Management, and we went to some very outlying areas in Penrose and some other places. And there are, speaking of the summertime and the winter, versus the wintertime for the count, BLM is really stating that in the summertime they can have upwards of 280 people who are homeless, who are traveling through those camping areas and staying there. So, the numbers could be quite a bit higher than what we have done in January. But they were very supportive this year and took us to very back roads, places that traditional people wouldn't go to, and we got a count from them as well. So a lot of additional partners this year, which is really nice, because we want to have a solid picture of what's going on in the community. So we're thankful for everyone that's really being supportive.
All right, thank you.
So then, for those folks that said that they had lived here less than a year, we wanted to know where they came from. And so you'll see on the right side of the screen that 54% of them actually came outside of Colorado, and then you'll see the breakdown of inside of Colorado where they came from. We always are curious at what brings people to Colorado, and particularly what brings people to Canyon City, and you can again see the breakdown of what brought folks here.
Just an additional comment on the 40% for El Paso. We did talk to quite a few people who said because they were really clearing out the camps there, that there were a few of those people, obviously, who were coming from the camps in the springs that were being cleared out and coming down to Canyon City. So,
Yeah.
Okay, Councilman Meisner has a question.
On those responses, are those responses that were generated by the individuals, or were those, okay.
Yeah.
the whole point in time count is individual reported. So those people reported to us, we recorded that.
Yeah.
It wasn't one of 4 options.
No, we asked them, what county did you come from, if they came from within Colorado, and they told us what county or what city they came from.
What about for what brought you to Fremont County?
Right.
We had there was probably a list of 10 reasons, and then there was an other that they could fill out, so.
Is it possible in a survey that you would have a third question that goes along with the right-hand side that says, how did you get here? I mean, there's some ugly rumors that float around the community in terms of how some of our homeless people are getting here.
Mm-hmm.
It would be interesting to see what kind of response that somebody brought me here in a van.
Right,
Not that that would ever happen, but
yeah. No, that's a good
question.
question, we can definitely add that.
I got a question. Now, you got 28% wanted a fresh start. Across from that, you have 54% outside of Colorado. Does that 28 coincide with the 54?
no.
So I can't.
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you know, I don't know if you guys want to go that in depth, but, you know, it would be interesting to see, especially when we're talking about people coming from El Paso County, people coming from Pueblo County and Denver and all those stuff. Actually, how many of them did come for those specific reasons? Employment, domestic violence, or had family living here, so. Because maybe the 23% that said they had family living here, maybe most of those folks might have been coming from Pueblo County or something like that. And that's important, I think, because now we have a sense of why some of those folks are coming here. Maybe some of them are coming here because we have better domestic violence treatment centers and things like that, which benefits us as a county in that. So.
Mm-hmm. So another question that we asked was, what caused you to become homeless? And again, this was a multiple choice out of probably maybe 10 different items. And then you'll see the breakdown of that.
Dee Dee, I just need to ask that you guys speak, maybe pull the microphones closer to your mouth. And it's because it's on television, and that way we want to make sure everyone can hear you.
Okay.
I just wanted to make a comment. When you look at the highest one, 26% for mental health, substance use, and health, those are problems that we can tackle. We can affect that, and that's a really positive thing. The affordable housing, we know, is a huge issue. It is a huge issue to tackle. Mental health, substance use, that's, can be individual driven, and so if you look at that, that's 1 in 4, which runs nationwide. So we're in line with the nationwide statistics of people with mental health or substance use disorders. And if you could tackle just those, you'd take 25% of people who are homeless, off of the street into some stable housing. That's a huge number just right there alone. So, so there's some positive information that has come out of this about what we could target, how we could help.
Another question that was asked is, what type of assistance would be most helpful? And we asked individuals to identify their top 3 choices. And finding housing, as you can see, was their number 1 choice. And then employment, and then the shower, transportation, and medical needs. Do you have income
Excuse me,
Yes.
Councilman Turner has a question.
Sure.
Can you go back just one more?
Sure, I can.
I was like losing track of my question while I was listening. For those of the people who said lack of income, was it folks who were having trouble finding a job, or was their job not paying a sufficient wage, or did you get a sense of that?
Yeah, it was probably both. So we had lots of different volunteers that were giving the survey, and some folks maybe spent a little bit of time, talking with people and got more of their story, and maybe other volunteers were quicker in doing it, but just because of where they were at or that kind of thing. And so I could say it was probably with both, but I don't know if I really have data to back that up other than just where they put the check mark. Yeah.
Okay.
There is kind of a side note, which is probably separate from this particular statistic, but another maybe gap that they found is that there are opportunities to find jobs for the homeless, but a struggle that they have is helping them to keep that job because of their life skills. Sometimes if there's a conflict, they don't know how to deal with that conflict, and they might get upset and just walk away and quit, or end up getting fired. And so that's another thing the Homeless Coalition is trying to tackle, is with volunteers to help mentor some of those folks who have jobs to help them keep those jobs. And so hopefully we'll see more progress. I know they need more volunteers for that particular program.
I would just, a lot of times when you're conducting surveys, you have problems. The issue is are you getting really the straight story in the answers that you have? And looking at the categories that we have there, my choice, it'd be interesting to hear some of the stories that people had. Why is it their choice? I mean, because a lot of times choices are made because and based in mental health or substance abuse issues. And so I would say, I would look at those numbers with a grain of salt, because self-reporting is not always the most accurate, and there can be if you are answering questions from someone, you may not want to admit, well, hey, I've got a mental health problem, and that's what's causing me. And so I would really expect that 26% to actually be perhaps substantially more than that.
Yeah. And a lot of people, you're right. They may have a mental health issue and they don't want to say it, or they don't recognize that they have a mental health issue.
Right, yes, exactly.
The other thing that we really focused on and that we told every person before they, filled out the survey was, you don't have to answer any of these questions. If there's a question that's not comfortable for you, it's up to you whether you answer that or not. Our goal is just to help you. So the more information that we get about what is going on with you, the more we can take that back to the city and the county and figure out what we can do to help you. And I can just speak from my own experience. They were told very personal, private stories about their life and what has happened. So it can be true that there are more with a mental health, but usually they'll come right out and say, I'm not doing that great, so. We tried not to put any pressure on them to fill anything out they were not comfortable with.
Great.
One of the other questions that we asked was, do you have an income? And I forgot to adjust the slide. The first one should say 33% have no income, and then 67% have income. And then that's the breakdown of what their income was. One of the questions that we need to clarify when we do this next time is the one that said 74% receive public assistance. So public assistance, when you write the questions in your mind, it seems like it makes sense, and then when you actually start asking people the question, you're like, oh, that's not what we meant. And so there were probably several people that indicated that they indicated that they have income because they receive food stamps, and we were actually looking for cash income. And so not sure how accurate the 74% is that says they receive public assistance. I think that's a combination of actual cash, maybe TANF, SSI, that type of thing, plus food stamps. So that will be a question that, as a homeless coalition, we talked about. We need to clarify that a little bit next time.
And as you're thinking about that, if I was answering the question and I was getting meals somewhere, I might say that's public assistance.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. All right, so we have a Fremont County Homeless Coalition. We are so excited about this, yes. So this is our vision for the coalition: to make homelessness rare, brief, and non-reoccurring in Fremont County by treating people with dignity, respect, and care. The coalition has actually was founded in September of 2016. There's probably about 80 people on our roster. I would say our meetings, we probably have anywhere from 25 to 30 people that attend on a monthly basis. We have members from all across the spectrum. As you can see, there are government officials, faith community is there, service providers, medical providers, law enforcement, business owners, concerned citizens, people who have and are currently experiencing homelessness are all there. This is very much a working coalition. We keep talking about that. So we have various subcommittees, and right now those are the 4 subcommittees that we have, and we meet on the 3rd Thursday of every month from 9 to 10:30 at the United Methodist Church, and all of you are invited to come or listen or whatever. We'd love to have you. So some of the things that the coalition has kind of been working on since September 26, you'll see are listed here. We came up with a resource guide. We should have brought some, and we can definitely provide you with some. But it's a handy-dandy resource guide that it's small, it's a trifold, and it's designed for people who are experiencing homelessness. So it has all the resources that someone who is experiencing homelessness might need. We also have a website, FC Homeless Coalition, I believe is the website, and we have a volunteer who takes care of all of that and pays all the fees that are associated with that website. We also have volunteers that help out writing writing articles, and we spotlight a person who's experiencing homelessness. And the Daily Record, we'll put those in their paper along with the Shopper and the Crusader. Thank you. I'm sorry. Yeah, the Crusader. Yep. And other. We can read for yourself the other things that are on here. Any questions about some of those items that are listed?
I just have a couple of comments. On the resource guide, I believe you can also find it on the website. Yeah. And I think the city hall is supposed to have some at the front desk. If they don't, we need to get copies of it. We found that like the BLM really appreciates having those copies, because when they do go out to those homeless encampments in BLM land, that they have those resources to give to them, and there's options for the homeless to pursue different housing besides camping in the wilderness. And for other folks who care about the homeless, it helps them to know where to send them or who to donate to and who they can volunteer with as well. And Laundry of Love, the city did donate some money through the community agency funding, and Dee Dee has been good to forward sometimes their monthly reports.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So the reports come from Father Mark from the Episcopal Church, and he has a group of volunteers, and each of the teams have their own unique name that's kind of tied to a laundry term or something. And so every time they get done with they do it once a month, they'll send a report to Father Mark. And what I've noticed is that the volunteers are probably as blessed as the people who are going in and getting their clothes washed. And the whole idea behind Laundry Love is not just that you're providing the service of giving someone a free laundry service, but that you're actually building relationships with the people who come in. And so the volunteers are very intentional, and so they have snacks, they'll sit down with them. Many of the folks that come in now have been coming in month after month after month, and so they know them. And so they'll actually talk with them, and they're able to maybe help them get connected with other services, or just encourage them, or whatever it is that which was the dream, and it's finally happening. And they would just talk about the volunteers just shared just about hearing the stories and just seeing their people's lives being transformed by something as easy as having clean clothes, and just how much they appreciate that. And so it's neat reading their stories.
It is really neat. And I had an opportunity to meet one of the volunteers and talked about how she had just sat down and talked to one of the patrons and just spent time listening to her story and her talk. And at the end, the patron just rested her head on her shoulder and just said, thank you for listening and being my friend today.
Yeah.
And just how deeply touching that was.
Yeah.
And so those relationships are important, that it builds that trust to help them get the services that they need.
Yep.
Councilman Meisner, do you have a question?
I find it interesting that you have a website, and I may be naive here. Who uses the website?
Actually, everyone. So not only do service providers use the website, but people who are experiencing homelessness, most all of them have a phone, and most all of them have internet access onto their phone, and so they're actually able to find the resources that they need. We've actually gotten people from outside of the state of Colorado who've contacted us via the website wanting to know about emergency shelter, wanting to know about day center, coalition, how do you form those things. We're looking at doing something in our community. Can you call us and have a conversation? Okay. Yeah.
And so having access to that resource guide online is really good too, because a lot of the services and the pantries and the organizations that serve homelessness, I mean, one of the first things that the coalition did is we had all of these different organizations and volunteer groups helping, but never before did we have them all compiled into one place. And so we knew, who was getting what, when, where, and how, and where the gaps were. And so that's kind of a way to help facilitate that communication and collaboration.
Yeah. Yeah. So I noticed in my notes, we had talked about the Episcopal Church and them providing the extra shelter in the winter months. And sheltered nights are counted by person. So let me give you an example. So one night in our shelter, we have a 17-bed shelter. When we're full, we would say that we provided 17 nights of shelter because each bed was full by a person. So the Episcopal Church actually provided 550 nights of shelter this past winter season. And the Prospector Park, I think many of you know that they have allowed people to go up there and stay in their cars, or they've actually opened some of their cabins. We're allowing people to stay there free. And so this is people who were not paying. These are people that they allowed to stay for free. They provided 7,350 nights of shelter this past winter season, and that broke down. Most of them were obviously long-term. It was 15 families that included 19 adults and 30 children from November to March. That was the that was Prospector Park. The Episcopal Church was mainly just single men and women, and some children, I should say, too. All right, ongoing initiatives. Ashley had mentioned that we have the employment mentoring program, and so one of the things that we had heard, as you may know this already also, is Sylvista Health has the employment services that they provide, and one of the things that they shared with the coalition is that they can find people jobs, but they have a hard time keeping their job, and the reason for that is that they get frustrated or angry, or they have a child care problem or whatever, and instead of maybe talking it out with their boss or their coworkers or whatever, they'll just kind of give up and say, I can't do this, and they just never show up. And so what the coalition said was, how about if we come up with like a mentoring? So we're not therapists or any of that kind of stuff. We're just that good listener and can help you kind of make good decisions, guide you as you make those decisions. So this employment mentoring program was developed, and we have women who meet with women, and we have men who meet with men, and I believe all of our men mentors I think they're maxed out. I think we still have some space for women, but I know we could definitely use some more men mentors. And they actually go through a training process. Mary Dearborn, who's very involved in NAMI, and also does this training called Befriender, and it's really about just listening, active listening, kind of motivational interviewing kind of techniques. So she puts everyone through that course, and they meet regularly as mentors to talk about maybe some of their challenges and encourage one another. It's a very well thought out program, and they've done very well. One of the things we did last month at our coalition meeting was we wanted to identify concerns and goals that we wanted to work on for this coming year. And we kind of, we're still in the process of gathering all that information, but it looked like there were 3 things that kind of just stood out. And one of them, the first one, was a day center. We need a day center in our community. The church, Mountain View Church across the street, did a day center this last winter, which was wonderful, and people were able to go over there. However, they closed once the weather got warmer and stuff like that. They weren't able to commit to do it every day. We need an everyday day center. And so the coalition really wants to work on that, and I know that we'll have conversations with you guys about how we can go about partnering together to figure that out. The other one that kind of came to the top was outreach to people who are homeless. And some of that we're already doing, but it included things like, and you guys have already talked about this, was like the showering and the laundry and food. I remember one of our early Homeless Coalition meetings, and Sheriff Biker was there, and he was sharing about how he would go out into some BLM land or on the outside, encampment areas. And one of the things that caused him concern was he would see all this food just sitting there. Now, obviously, they don't have a way to store it properly, and it was rotting, and people were probably still eating it and all that kind of stuff. And we don't want that, right? We're all human beings here, and we need to be treated with respect and dignity. And so what can we as a coalition do to maybe help in that effort? And so that was another one that came up. And then the third one was outreach to business and just the general public. So we know that there are still folks out there that believe that everyone who is experiencing homelessness is there because that's what they want to do, and they're incapable of doing everything else, and they're all alcoholics and drugs. And I know none of you up there believe that, and I know her and I do not believe that, but there are still so many people that believe that. And so one of the coalition's goal is really we want to stop that, and we want to have people hear the stories, but we also know that there are some people who are experiencing homelessness that are not good neighbors. And what can we do, right, as a coalition? What can we do to help that? And what can some of our members do to help eliminate that? We don't have any answers yet, but that is something that we definitely want to talk about. And I know that what's near and dear to her heart is we would love to, at some point, put on like a homeless symposium where we can really have an honest conversation about homelessness in Fremont County, because that's all we're trying to work on is Fremont County. We're not going to try to solve Colorado's homelessness problem. We want to solve our problem. And so what does it look like in Fremont County? And just have a talk about it, hear what other communities are doing, other rural communities are doing to solve the problem, and maybe there are some things that we can learn from them, and hear from people who are experiencing homelessness to maybe break down some of those biases that we have, and maybe we don't even realize we have those biases. So
I think that's a really good point, and in determining, it's, goal 2 and 3 are about communication to people who are homeless and communication to the various businesses and the general public, because, we do know that there are people who are homeless who will go into a business and use a restroom and to clean up and, won't clean up after themselves. We know those types of things exist, and what we want the general public to know and the businesses to know is, we want to try to help with that. We want to try to mitigate that, to fix that, because we know businesses don't want that. We understand why. And we also know that a person who is homeless doesn't have anywhere else to clean up, and that's probably, what they're going to try to do. So we're not necessarily a go-between, but we're just wanting to open up the communication between the general population and people who are homeless, and get that conversation going, because there are a lot of myths out there and misconceptions about people who are experiencing homelessness, and I think education is really going to be the key for the county, for the city and the county to work together, for the businesses to work together. So this is not a one entity problem. This is a county problem. It's going to require everyone in this county to start working together to solve the issues, because it's not going to go away. We are going to have to address it. So that's our goal, and we've done a lot towards that, and there's a lot left to do. But
Yeah.
we really do appreciate the support of everyone in the city and the county for what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and I guess we would like for you guys to see us as a resource. So if there are issues that you have and Ashley has been very good about bringing those to the coalition about this is what we're seeing about the parks and stuff like that. And so we would like to be that resource.
And we have a question from Councilmember Gonzalez.
I don't have a question, I just have more of a comment. I don't know if you're done with your presentation or not.
We are, we just have one last little.
Okay, let's finish up.
No,
and then-
no, it's just, this is it.
Oh, okay. Well, I want to thank you, ladies, for coming out and updating us on the, this issue. I just want to let you know that I'm feeling encouraged, because even though the numbers have dropped, and we have good reason for that, I'm encouraged that they've continued to stay low. So whatever everyone doing as a collective effort is working. So thank you for putting all your time and your energy into this, because with all of these things moving, we can make headway. So thank you.
Yep.
Okay, and a comment from Councilman Hamrick.
Just a question, excuse me. Have you had the opportunity to present this to the commissioners also?
We will be
You will
presenting
be.
it to them,
Great.
as well as we are going to be presenting to the Downtown Business Association, and there's probably about 30 members that come to that, so that the businesses will understand what we're trying to do, how they can help, how we can help them. So we are Rotary Club, Lions Club, we're trying to get everywhere to
Be considered
present.
FEDC?
We'll
we
go
haven't
wherever
contacted them.
anyone asks us.
Yes, we
Yeah.
definitely would like to disseminate the information, because that's where I think we're going to have our strength, is letting people know what's going on and how they can help and how we can work together.
So Councilmember Hamrick, if you want to meet with FEDC, he'd be a good resource to help you get on the agenda, probably.
Thank
So
you.
we have
Thank you.
Councilmember Turner.
So I know you said that your focus really is homelessness in Fremont County, but from a couple of your first slides, it sounds like the actions that El Paso County has taken and Colorado Springs have really impacted our homeless population. And so I wonder, how do you think about that, and where does that play into the work that you're doing and the support that you're hoping to get here in our community?
Yeah, great question. So one of the things that we hear from people who come outside of Fremont County area is our shelter is obviously much safer than what it would be in the Colorado Springs. And one of the primary reasons for that is the size. So our shelter is 17 beds. I believe the Springs is like 150 or 160. And so they have different rules because they have a larger population, where our rules are different because we have a smaller population. The other thing that we hear is that services. So you here in Fremont County, you could pretty much walk into Department of Human Services, and if you are experiencing homelessness, they will pretty much get you food stamps right away. Almost same day, if not same day, very, very quickly. That's not the case for other communities. The same goes through for our like Rocky Mountain Behavioral Health, if you want to get connected there, or if you want to go to Sylvista Health or Gateway or any of the other mental health providers that we have in our community. Getting into those agencies is very quicker than what it is maybe in the larger cities. So I don't know how we stop people from coming from Colorado Springs to here. Other than, I don't know how to do that. And I don't think we will ever, I don't see us getting to the point where we're going to say to someone who walks to our shelter, I'm from Colorado Springs, and we're going to say, no, you can't stay here. I think we're going to provide them services. And because again, it goes back to, we are all people, right? And we all deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, no matter where I come from. And I think if I had a family member who was homeless, I would want that person to be treated with dignity and respect, no matter what door they showed up on, right? It takes a lot of courage just to get to the door, and I don't want to slam the door in their face saying, I'm sorry, you can't be helped because you're not a Fremont County resident.
Councilmember Meisner.
My question goes right to your current statement. where's the philosophy? I'm going to say that philosophy, that as we improve the quality of services in Canyon City / Fremont County, we attract more homeless. And I recognize your humanity viewpoint, but there's some philosophies which are working against your efforts, that as we improve and make more amenities available and services available to our homeless population, we encourage more people to come here, which complicates and increases the problem. So where's the balance there? Because at some point, somehow, logic would tell you, and I realize that's not necessarily a humanitarian answer, logic would tell you we've reached a limit. So
Yeah.
where's the balance?
So I guess my initial thought on that is that the number of people who are experiencing homelessness in our community is extremely low. I don't know what Pueblo's point-in-time count was this year, 2019, but their 2018 point-in-time count was over 1,000, and ours was 198. So I don't know if I could even say, and I know that there's a slide that said 50-50, but I'm not sure that we're attracting the number of people that maybe Denver would be attracting, or Colorado Springs is attracting, or just because there are larger communities that have, I mean, we have great resources, but we don't have the resources that those folks have. So I don't know if I would agree with the statement that we're attracting all these new people to Canyon City because of the great resources that we're providing. I think they're coming here because of other reasons too. Yes, we have great resources, but just because we serve great meals in our emergency shelter doesn't mean that they're coming to our emergency shelter because there's nothing else for them here. I mean, there's not a lot of other resources for them here. I'm not sure. Go ahead.
Didi,
Yeah,
can I?
please.
So statistically, nationwide, when they have done surveys, exactly what you're asking is, you know, if you have all these fantastic resources and provide housing for everyone, you're going to be the magnet for people who are homeless. And that is a myth. Statistically, that is not true. Nationwide, that is not true. So although somebody may in Colorado Springs say, you know, I'm going to go to Canyon City because the weather's nicer and it's quieter, or for that particular reason, we don't have the type of funding and money here that other bigger cities have. I'm just going to use the day center as an example. Take any other major city, and there are day centers everywhere for people who are homeless. So I think what Dee Dee's trying to say is there are, I almost feel like she's trying to say there's more of a personal connection with people who are trying to get services who are homeless here. They don't feel like they're lost in this, you know, mass of other people who are experiencing this. So I feel like it's more of a personal connection, but statistically, it is not supported that you will have all these resources and people will come because of that. So I think, you know, we have to put that in perspective.
I'm Council Member Hamrick.
Thank you. You know, that's a thorny question, and kind of one of the things that is starting to come through to me in this issue is that if you are offering a free lunch and free this and free that, you can get the freeloaders, okay, if we want to use that term, which is a little bit pejorative, but nonetheless, you can get the freeloaders. But if your focus is not so much on providing the free stuff, but providing the other support mechanisms where you're trying to help people get jobs, you're trying to talk to them when they do laundry, you're trying to mentor them to help them find work, that's a bootstrap up, as opposed to just the, you know, it's like the bird seed. If you put bird seed out in a bird feeder, you get lots of birds. You know, that's, and they're there for the free stuff. But the way that we're working it seems to me that the way that we're working it is more holistic, and by not just focusing on, you know, how much free stuff are we giving away, but trying to actually help the people through mentoring, through establishing self-worth again, because that's really, I'm sure, a big part of this, that a lot of the people that you're dealing with don't have a good sense of that. And by reestablishing that and showing them, mentoring them, that it is a concern, and it's something that we have to be concerned about. But I think that we kind of have a little bit different flavor, I think, to this program here, is what I think.
Thank you. Councilman Meisner?
Just because I asked the question doesn't mean that that's my belief.
No.
But I do believe that that's a stigma that complicates a reasonable amount of support or lack of support from some organizations, is that fundamental belief that as we increase services, we make it easier for people to come here. My actual question for my blight was 2 points. There seems to be maybe a myth in Pueblo that their numbers have some correlation or relationship to the availability of retail marijuana. What's your thoughts there? Does that or does that not impact? And are there any national studies that suggest that those communities that have recreational marijuana have a larger percentage of homeless versus not?
I think it's a statistic actually for law enforcement in the county. I think that they try to gauge that when they're talking with people, unless you have some, but I know that they do try to monitor that and look at that. So that might be a more pertinent question for law enforcement.
Question 2. We obviously tried to provide a solution relative to the shower unit. I see that that was number 4 or 5 on your list of important amenities, which was surprising to me because I was under the impression that that was very high on the priority list. Knowing the complications that we face relative to providing a shower unit, particularly an ADA compliant shower unit, where does that sit now in terms of your needs or priorities? And I ask relative to that if the city continues to allocate a dollar amount to try to assist in the homeless issue, if we're going to address the shower thing, we probably need a couple of years of funding to do that. And is that particular amenity worth the sacrifice? I'm going to call it a sacrifice that, you know, if we plop down $80,000 for a shower unit, that's the only support you're going to receive for a year. Does that make sense? Or 2 years?
You can address that, but one thing I want to address is it's actually number 3 on what type of assistance would be most helpful that people who were homeless, that was their determination. It wasn't from a coalition standpoint. So it was important to people who are homeless. It was number 3 in their needs. So that's what type of assistance would be most helpful. 73% said assistance in finding housing, 17% said employment assistance, and then next on the line was shower facilities at 13.
At 13. Maybe it was the 13% that got me versus the bullet point.
Well, and it could be. I mean, obviously, assistance in finding housing was the top priority. And again, we're trying to tackle, you know, manageable obstacles, but having affordable housing in any community is a really tough issue right now, and especially in this one. So it's not that we don't want to tackle that, but the shower facility was, we know that people want to be clean. We know that they're probably not going to get a job unless they're clean. We know that children who go to school that are not clean are bullied more. So, so it is a really important endeavor. I'll let Dee Dee speak to whether that is how the coalition wants to be supported, or I don't know that we even have that determination. You know, we've had a lot of conversations with Ashley Smith, and so I don't know.
in our subcommittee meeting, didn't feel like it was sustainable in a community that's servicing only 125 homeless, whereas most communities, it's not just in this $60,000 or $80,000 for the mobile shower unit. It was we'd have to buy a larger truck that could pull it, and we would have to have someone who had a CDL license to pull and operate it, and that was a really big obstacle, which was a little bit more easy to justify for these communities that usually service 2,000 to 3,000 homeless people, where ours is just 125. So percentage-wise, there could be some more wiser use of that money
But does,
for Fremont County.
we talked about the huge expense of the mobility of that shower unit. Does it make sense that not be a mobile unit and it be a permanent structure somewhere?
So one of the things that Loaves and Fishes Board of Directors has been talking about is the expanding our emergency shelter, and part of that conversation was also increasing the number of showers that we have there. And so we have some contractors that are in the process of providing us with some estimates and to see what that would cost, and then our board will decide if we want to proceed with that. If we do decide to proceed with that, we may at that point come and approach you to see if we can access some of that. And then our plan is that we have vehicles where we could pick people up, and drop folks off and kind of help in that effort. Yeah. Yeah.
So on that point, I would like to say, as we look forward to our budgeting, to make sure that we do set some money aside each year to support overcoming homelessness. We do have Councilmember Jaquez that would like to say something.
Yeah, I don't have a question. I just want to make a comment. And then this is kind of like with Mr. Meisner and Mr. Hamrick. When you do it, and I don't care whether it's with the homeless or whether it's higher paying jobs and stuff like that, anytime a community does stuff like that, it's going to attract. And I'm not saying don't stop doing what you're doing, but let's face reality, okay? If we do things like that, it is, okay? That's not your intention when you do it. But the facts are out there. They'll come, okay? And we provide the services through mental health and everything else. So I think we need to look at, let's be realistic. Those things that we do to help improve will draw more people. But in a sense, it's kudos to you because you're doing those things for unselfish purposes, okay? And if it does create that, and you're still able to handle the needs that you need to handle, that's fine. That's the main goal. I would imagine with anybody that wants to help out the homeless, and that we'll never end, unfortunately, we'll never end homelessness. It's never going to go away. Just like drugs and alcohol are never going to go away. The main cause is how can we best treat it for our community. So I want to commend you guys for what you do. Keep doing the work that you're doing. And hopefully we can have a little bit of a shining light on everything that's being done.
Thank you.
All right. I think we don't have any more comments from council members, so I do want to say thank you so much. Just like to point out that these two ladies obviously have a lot of passion for the services that they give, but the entire coalition does. There's a lot of big hearts that go into their community service and that they do. And would just like to send out a little reminder to all of those nonprofits that you rub shoulders with that help with the homelessness, that it's going to be coming time for the community agency funding, and that application form can be found on the city's website, and make sure that they turn it in. That has been a priority for us to help in this matter through that funding mechanism. Councilman Meisner.
Two things. One of them is maybe slightly inappropriate, but it is an election year. I think this council generally has a warm heart to trying to address the homeless situation, which means allocating monies. And whether we allocate monies for trestles or homeless or what have you, it still comes out of the same jar. And each time we pull something out, something else will not get accomplished. But the point is, this council's been pretty compassionate about that whole issue, at least in my belief. And I'm in that same situation. But we're entering a time frame where you're going to see hopefully a number of individuals that are interested in sitting at this dais. And I would suggest that you educate those individuals and find out and make that part of the whole process, that people understand that it's a community problem that we have to deal with. We just can't close the door on it or sweep it somewhere, because it's not going to go away. Because your next council will be the determining factor as to whether we're talking about a $40,000, a $50,000, $60,000, whatever dollar amount that they're going to allocate in the budget to potential assistance for your guys' programs. So just kind of keep that in mind. And again, I commend you for all of the work that you do and your compassion for it. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having us, and again, we want to thank the community,
Can we get a copy of that?
because we're going to do that together, so.
So Councilman Meisner requested if you could send a copy of the PowerPoint to the city council members, that would be well appreciated.
Yep, we can do that.
All right.
Thank you guys
Well,
for your
Thank
time.
you again, and this meeting is adjourned.